Hi guys, we're just looking at a mock Australian Constitution. Just with the wording doesn't matter, but it's just the incorporation of some new powers, or really uh, added legal principles for creating legislative acts. Constitutional originalism plus sunset clauses work hand in hand. You're drawing upon a head of power, and you're doing so by a review mechanism. Um, this is very good because at the moment our wine industry is struggling. They deal with most likely many federal as well as state taxes or other associated issues, and uh, it's called legislative bloat, and legislative bloat will destroy the private sector. Uh, and what it does is it means that people have to work more and more jobs to survive, because you're stripping jobs out of the economy all the time. And it's as a result of legislative bloat. There's far too many legislative instruments flying around. And the other problem is that you end up with ever growing governmental departments because they can't handle the load of all the legislation moving through. So they have to keep employing people to keep up with it. And I am very big on the concept of review over legislation, because if it doesn't meet its purpose, try and fix it or just throw it, get rid of it, because it's a hindrance. And it's good for the private economy. It's good for all general workers, more jobs for them, so that they can maintain a standard over their lives. And the other thing is that one of the best tests over a government is how well they can handle a tax power. And in 1999, the John Howard government majorly failed with the implementation of GST. They didn't add a threshold mechanism into the act to determine a 50/50 goods and services tax. So business activity statements are largely providing economic inconsistencies. So our GDP has about, I think about 3.5% of our GDP would fall into the category of being false, which is GST. It's either a goods or a service tax. It could have been simply corrected with a threshold mechanism in the act and better economic clarity. This is the fundamental problems with democracy. You end up with just poor quality legislative control, because what you have is a bunch of people trying to get more and more power, centralization over the legislative process, rather than trying to provide due process over the legislative process, and provide for better quality standards in legislative process. And so I can never ever be an advocate for democracy for this very reason, because what you end up with is just poor quality legislation piling up. Yes, um, I've run two businesses officially, and I walked away for them for similar reasons: too much legislation, too much regulation, too many costs. That's why I won't run a business in Australia. I would rather run a business in Vietnam. And we've got too big of a government and too much legislation, and not periodically reviewed legislation. And Also, dilution rule, an added dilution rule also works to fix things, as well as a substantial nexus rule or provision added over Section 51.2 or taxation. And these things also provide clearer channels for invalidating terrible acts. And that can be your social media act recently. If it had a periodic review clause, such as a sunset clause, it's far easier to invalidate through Section 109. So the fundamental problem is you don't want lawyers and police and parliament. You want people like me who've actually run a business. And we're big on the concept of legal due process and maintaining standards. And ultimately, you'll end up with a better political system that works more in your favor. So you could never convince me that there is a good thing, a good democracy, but you could convince me that there are good representatives. I love the notion of representative constitutional republicanism, and our constitutional text is actually mostly Republican in nature. And so independents and the classical Republican Party were more representative of that constitutional text. And thank you very much. It's a bit of a longer video, but something I thought I needed to touch on a little bit more about. And so I hope you enjoyed it. And don't forget to subscribe to our social media channels. Appreciate it. Thank you. Bye.